Pashut in Hebrew, all right, means simple. So Pashut is simple. It also is literal. Ooh, the big bad word. So often literal, when people are studying the scriptures, is a two-edged sword. And the reason for that is because literal is just the foundation. But some people can take it to extremes and they can make it legalistically literal. And then there's others that don't want to bother with the literal. They just want the spiritual, and they mess themselves up because they forget the literal. One of the explanations that I like to give is the name in the Bible, Israel. Now we know that the name Israel was the name that Jacob received from God after wrestling with God to get a blessing. He was not going to let him go until he got a blessing. And probably inside of that wrestling, Jacob was also looking for a character change. He wanted things to be different. I mean, he had to make some very, very tough choices that alienated him from his family, that caused a lot of strife and problems with his beloved brother, caused probably, a little bit of bitterness, and definitely maybe a little bit of disrespect towards his mother, because she was really the instigator behind Jacob stealing the blessing from his brother Esau. And so, Jacob had to deal with a lot. So he wrestled with God. And his name was changed to Israel. And then Israel went on to become a nation. And there's a lot about that change that manifests itself throughout Scripture. So, when Christianity began to develop its framework, and especially when we see the Catholic Church emerge, there was a theologian called St. Augustine. And he did not understand the role of Israel, because there, apparently was no more Israel. I mean, it had been taken over by the Romans. The temple was destroyed. It was now called Palestine. And the Jewish people were scattered. And the Christian church adopted a narrative that it had replaced Israel. And now the church was Israel. So that narrative transgressed the laws and the four essentials to biblical interpretation, because that narrative leaves off the Pashut. It leaves off the literal. It leaves off the entire cultural and historical and linguistic foundation of the Bible. And by doing so, it created a doctrine that, instead of upholding the words of Paul and his admonition and warning to the Gentiles concerning the house of Israel in the book of Romans, it actually did what Paul was warning them not to do, and that was to supersede God's purpose and plan for the nation of Israel.